Well, the latest Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Sentiment Survey has just been released, and it's no great surprise the RBA's decision to raise rates by 1/4 percentage point in November has knocked confidence back on its heels. Sentiment dropped 2.6% in the month, back slightly below the 80 level. That's deeply pessimistic. 100 is neutral for this index measure. And responses over the course of the survey week really highlight the impact that the RBA decision had. Prior to Tuesday's decision, we had seen responses improving slightly on October, maybe a 1 to 2 percentage point improvement, but the decision itself had a 6 percentage point impact on responses, leading us to a weaker result for the month as a whole. The move has clearly sparked concerns that we may see further interest rate increases, and also raised fears that the task of bringing inflation back under control could be harder and take longer. When we asked consumers specifically about their expectations for mortgage interest rates, 73% of those surveyed after the RBA decision expect rates to move higher over the next 12 months. Only 4% expect rates to be lower this time next year. That compares to about 63% last month and less than 50% back in September. At the same time, when we look at the detailed indexes, the sub-indexes that feed into our overall index, the weakness was really around the forward view for family finances, particularly in the mortgage belt. That segment saw a 15% drop in assessments for the next 12 months, but also some weakness around assessments of time to buy a major household item, which between pre and post RBA, responses to that particular question dropped 15%. So there's a very clear and present impact on buyer sentiment. More generally, consumers are also more concerned about the 5-year outlook. And I think this sort of speaks to the concern that the inflation task could be harder and take longer to bring back under control. We saw about a 6.5% drop in expectations for the economy over the 5-year horizon. Obviously, this is pretty ominous reading heading into the Christmas high season. We have an additional question we run in November about consumers' plans for Christmas spending. They show 40% of Australians are planning to spend less on Christmas this year than last year. The long run average for that response is about 33%, so it's clearly an austere Christmas shaping up. That's similar to what we saw last year. It looks like we're going to have a repeat of the penny pinching Christmas spend that we saw in 2022, and that's going to be hard to achieve given the cost of living and price increases that we're seeing at the moment as well. So the key for the RBA is the extent to which these very weak consumer sentiment reads feed through to domestic demand. Our most recent Westpac card tracker shows consumer spending is still pretty patchy, slightly improving in the third quarter, but it looks to be softening again in October. As we move into November, in the next few weeks, we'll get reads for the first weeks of November, and they'll be quite critical. That'll include the Black Friday and Cyber Week sales period, and that's going to be a real litmus test for the consumer in terms of their actual spending activity. It wasn't all doom and gloom. Within the details, there are some variances across different subgroups. Obviously, the weakest readings are around the mortgage belt, where those interest rate hikes are impacting heavily. But we are seeing some slight improvements in family finances and other segments, so older age groups and those in higher incomes, and also those that own investment properties have seen some slight improvement. Also, responses around the labour market show consumers are still seeing labour market conditions as fairly benign and are not overly concerned. But the general takeaway here is that we've seen a significant knockback to confidence heading into the Christmas period. It's shaping up as another austere Christmas season as far as consumers go, and unfortunately a bit of a penny pinching spend for Christmas gifts as well.